What's up, everyone? Dylon here, and today we're going to be talking about Trump and Bitcoin. This next upcoming political election could be pivotal. Pivotal. I need to stop saying that word. Could be pivotal. Bitcoin and crypto. So like, comment, share, subscribe, and let's get into this video. This came up recently. I'll get into the Trump things here in just a second, and the politics of Bitcoin. Probably things that are now really controversial to talk about at a bar. You're not supposed to talk about politics and religion at a bar, and maybe now Bitcoin and crypto is going to be that. Although I hope not, because Bitcoin's fun to talk about. It's kind of like talking about physics if you really get nerdy about it and get into it, and the future that can arise from sound money and having an incorruptible ledger. Immutable ledger, but incorruptible, right? Where so you can't change it. Anyways, let's talk about this because there's been some news which is a few weeks old, but it's going to be more and more relevant. And this question has obviously been posed, and this is on Reddit. What if the U.S. bans self-custody or bans the use of hardware wallets? I'm a huge Bitcoin bull, but I'm concerned because I do think the government is dumb enough to resort to something like that. Is that a real threat to American Bitcoin holders? Yes and no. So people made comparisons, like when they banned drugs and alcohol and everyone became straight edge. Americans aren't really, even though they can ban things, Americans aren't really known for following through on the bans. We like to go around those. Maybe that's changing with these generations now, but historically, Americans really haven't been ones that say, yes, government, of whatever you say goes. Now, that is changing, but I always like to say that if the government, especially the United States government, there's other governments that might try to do this, but if the United States government tries to ban self-custody, there's going to be a lot of pushback. I think there's something like between 50 and 80 million Bitcoiners in the United States, or people that have some Bitcoin. That's a large amount of people. And they are not going to be happy about that. And just coincidentally, people in Bitcoin are a little bit more freedom-loving and believe in things like the First and Second Amendment. You're going after an outspoken, individualist, independent, prepared group of people, which isn't necessarily the type of people that you want to go after and you want to make enemies with, just because they hold really strong beliefs and they're prepared to fight for those beliefs, right? You don't really want to make enemies with groups like that. And I think if the United States does that, again, that would be a disastrous move on a macro strategic level, and it would represent just a terrible shift away from a lot of the foundations. And you really have to start questioning a lot of the current state of the country and what the country is founded on if that kind of stuff gets passed through, and the manner in which it gets passed through. And there's already people that are seeing some writing on the wall, and they're getting passports and going abroad and that type of stuff. So that's always something to consider, to be prepared. But if they ban self-custody, that'd be a huge issue. And one of the reasons why they might want to ban self-custody is they don't want people necessarily holding the Bitcoin on their own. And of course, they want to control and hold the Bitcoin. They want to scare people away from doing that. Because the cool thing is, if you can self-custody your Bitcoin, and I'll get into the Trump things in just a second, but if you self-custody your Bitcoin, no one can take it from you unless you don't store it appropriately. Like, they'll have to come and take it or come and get access to your seed words, your private seed words. Don't give those to anyone, by the way. Never, ever share your private keys. Someone will have to physically come and take that from you. And obviously, that'd be very, very difficult for the government to do to 80 million people. Okay, that's not very, very hard. So they have to find other ways to incentivize you not to do the thing they don't want you to do. And we have learned that the carrot works better than the stick. It's much better to make people believe they're free, to get them to act as if they're free, while simultaneously they're basically a tax slave. Okay, it's like the Matrix. Make them believe that they're free in this virtual world where you're harvesting all their energy and life force until they die, and you get to manipulate and control their lives however you want. Okay, we've learned that's a lot better system than to use a lot of force. It just doesn't go over as well. It's a lot harder because you have to do things in the physical world, which is tough to scale, and it just doesn't work as well. It makes people mad, and you get a lot of enemies when you use too much force. So they're going to probably not ban it, but make it harder for that to happen, and they're probably going to make it harder for companies to be compliant that offer pure self-custody and things like that if they're going to go that route. And they probably already will start doing some of that, and you'll see them encouraging you to use certain apps over other apps. You might notice certain apps have marketing boosts and other ones don't. But the beautiful thing about self-custody is that it is open source, okay? You can go and generate your own wallet. This is bitaddress.org. I don't recommend you use this for anything like that you're actually using. There's other methods and other things out there. You need to really do some research if you're going to go down that route. But Here I'm just moving my mouse around to generate randomness for whatever the source code is. So you can go, if you know this type of stuff, you know the code, you can go look into this. And anyone can. It's not hidden code. It's just there's a learning barrier there, but if you learn it, okay? But anyways, I just waved my mouse around on there, generated enough address, and it created me a public key and a private key. Okay, this is open source code that can be used anywhere in the world. You can create your own wallet by just rolling the die, and there's methods you can use to create your own wallet where you don't have to go through any third-party provider. So if they're going to ban or take actions to legislate and ban self-custody, they're going to attack where they can, right? Where there's the head of the snake, and those are the third-party providers. So your big companies like Ledger, Trezor, that kind of stuff, that'll be who they'll go after and be like, hey, you need to put this type of compliance into your wallets, this type of access. Or if you need to actually maintain a record, so if we subpoena you, you have to give us the private keys of certain wallets and things like that. So that's the type of stuff that could happen. And if that happens, you just have to understand that now you have a trusted third party. You may get some benefits of self-custody, but whenever there's a trusted third party that can overrule you, then it's not truly self-custody. You're not truly self-sovereign. So you need to understand the methods that you can take to legally be self-sovereign and self-custody. And thankfully, that isn't a problem. But with that type of conversation, that stuff coming up, this person, Bitcoin.org owner Cobra warns about illegalization of Bitcoin self-custody in the United States. There is issues about some of the wallets and mixers, things like that. So people talk about this, and it is possible. And you should never, obviously you hope your government doesn't go down this route, but you should understand that they may try to go down this route. Not saying that they will. So because of that, because we're talking about government creating legislation or policies that can influence a group of people, it becomes a political issue. And because we have an election coming up this fall, it's going to be a talking point, and they're going to, and both sides of the aisle are going to take a position on this and take a stance on this. So if the Democrats say they want to create these laws and legislation, they want to regulate self-custody, well, then the conservatives are probably going to take hey, we're not going to. We're going to fight for that. We're going to fight for your rights to have self-custody. And that's what we are seeing. And so let's just go over to the Trump thing. Okay, Trump tweets support of crypto ahead of a libertarian. Let's see here. U.S. President Trump is open-minded to cryptocurrency. Donald Trump rallies behind crypto in new Truth Social post. I think a big thing, and this is, we saw some of this with the ETF getting pushed through. It's becoming a political issue. And I know Elizabeth Warren on the Democrat side has been very anti-crypto the past few years, and very anti-crypto and anti-Bitcoin. And I think what we're seeing right now is this conversation taken to the political stage. And it hasn't really been there in the past, and it hasn't needed to be there. But like I said, 50 to 80 million Americans, that's a large voting block of people. And so if you can win those people over, that could be the difference in winning an election or not. And so they really need to start looking, and they've been looking into this stuff. It's not like they just decided. They've been researching the crypto markets, and they've been trying to decide what positions and stuff to take on it over the years. I'm sure of it, right? Why wouldn't you? They got a bunch of analysts working for them doing that kind of stuff. Let's see here. Donald Trump pledges to stop Biden's anti-crypto agenda, protect Bitcoin, free Ross Ulbricht. And Ross Ulbricht, I think, was a guy behind the Silk Road, which was one of the original. It was basically a marketplace where people could use Bitcoin to buy and sell goods and services, and sometimes illicit goods and services. And he created the platform, kind of just an open market, and he's still in jail. So people don't think that the sentence fits what he did to say that. And so he kind of was hit with a heavy hand back in the early days. And obviously that hasn't squashed Bitcoin. And if it's getting adopted by both the general public and then financial institutions and then now potentially the government, then maybe that guy might be free. And so it would be a good position to take. Hey, we're pro freedom, we're pro Bitcoin. We don't think that he deserves to be locked up like he was. That was a mistake. Let's fight to end this. So that's a good position for Trump to take if he wants to win over the Bitcoin crowd. Now, I will say, here's what he says. So presidential candidate and 45th U.S. President Donald Trump has declared support for the crypto sector. Okay, I will also stop Joe Biden's crusade to crush crypto, he promised. I will support the right to self-custody. He will also commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht to a sentence of time served. Moreover, Trump stressed, I will keep Elizabeth Warren and her goons away from your Bitcoin and will never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency. Man, someone did their research and said, this is what you need to say to win over Bitcoiners. So anyways, it's going to start here. And one thing to look out for in this is when people first get into Bitcoin and crypto. Let me find my book here. I have two books. Okay. And when they first get into it, they use crypto as the same as Bitcoin. And so when I first got into it, I wrote the book, The Crypto Business Accelerator. And it's still a great book. A little bit, some things are outdated in here, but generally conceptually it's the same. But I rebranded and rewrote it as the Bitcoin Business Accelerator as I was more involved in the space. And as I more understood the difference between the two. So I know I still slip up and we'll say crypto when Bitcoin and things like that. But in general, if we were having a conversation, you're asking me to distinguish the difference between crypto and Bitcoin, there's a few distinct differences. And I think they are different on how they operate and what they do and their use cases and how they should be regulated or could be regulated and looked at. I don't think they're quite the same. But with anyone coming into the space, they all feel the same to everyone. And that can be a problem for newbies. That's why I have those books. That's why I have the Bitcoin Business Accelerator, and I have education on there, and I want to educate people on that. And that's why I say when you're doing your own research that you should learn about Bitcoin first, understand that, and then move into the crypto space, because it's just going to give you a better foundation. You'll be able to better navigate that versus if you did it the other way around. It's just different approaches there. And this isn't the video to go into those details. But the whole point of me saying that is that you should expect the politicians to use those terms interchangeably. And when they say crypto, they mean Bitcoin. When they say Bitcoin, they mean crypto, because they don't really know the difference. And at the level of which they're speaking at it, because this is the first time they're really speaking about this stuff on their public platforms, on their campaign platforms, it's going to be like the first time you enter the space. They're going to get those confused. And I think over time, you'll start to see more nuance in how someone speaks about Bitcoin and crypto and the differences between the two and the rights and the laws and things associated with both. At least that's how I see how things evolve. Now, I could be completely wrong because they did just approve a spot ETF for ETH. And so, that's the same as they have for Bitcoin. So clearly, they're basically treating them the same. However, I do think that they are different, and I think I can't stress this enough. Do you know that I think that Bitcoin is different than crypto? I do. So it is good to see that Donald Trump is taking a stance against that. It's not good to see that because the current party in power is taking a stance against Bitcoin and crypto. And if they stay in power, then there might be more tricky legislation and stuff coming down line that might not be great for the space or might create more friction than necessary. And there's a pro and con to that, because if we had 4 more years where there's friction in the Bitcoin space, I obviously think Bitcoin will survive, but that also means that Bitcoin's cheaper for longer. You can buy more Bitcoin. So as long as the economy doesn't fully tank, you can keep buying Bitcoin at lower prices. Versus if Donald Trump wins and he comes out and says, hey, America's going to start buying Bitcoin, we're going to have a reserve, we're going to have a Bitcoin reserve policy in place, our Bitcoin reserve strategy in place. If he drops that type of campaign promise and then in office, Trump, he would do something like that, you could see the price skyrocket. And while that's exciting, I want more Bitcoin before that happens. I think you might be the same. If you're a Bitcoiner, you might recognize that would be a fundamental phase shift in the market. The markets that we know now and how they operate will be totally different if the United States is like, hey, by the way, we're buying Bitcoin and we're going to treat it as a reserve asset to a certain capacity, or whatever they announce. Michael Saylor always likes to talk about all your models are broken when Godzilla enters the stage. When you get a report that Godzilla is storming through your city fighting a kaiju, then all the models you had before about how things work, it's just out the window. And that would be what that would be. Like if the United States came out and said, hey, we're no longer selling Bitcoin, we're actually going to be buying Bitcoin, or we have been buying Bitcoin, you would see a God candle of all God candles. We saw this happen. Not a God candle of all God candles, but one of the biggest daily gains for Ethereum ever happened when they announced there's going to be a spot ETF. It went from like $3,000 per ETH to $3,700 or $3,800. Massive increase in price. And we saw that with just that announcement before the ETF actually was approved. So if something like that happens, we could see massive volatility to the upside in for something like Bitcoin and everything else, by the way. But Bitcoin's going to be the one that truly matters. But rising tide will lift all boats. So there's the other articles out there. Trump vows to aid a convicted Silk Road founder in crypto appeal, Ross Ulbricht. He was sentenced in 2015 for his darknet site. So again, he's looking to get some libertarian vote there. Let's see if we have anything else. Yeah, other than that. Let's see here. If you vote for me on day one, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht to a sentence of time served. He's already served 11 years. We're going to get him home. Trump is really trying to get the votes a solid turnout of votes for this and for saying this type of thing. This is really key. So what can happen in the long term, just to conclude here, is expect more of this conversation back and forth for the politicians. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Democrats recognize that it's a losing battle to be opposed to crypto, and they don't want to just give that whole voting block to the Republicans in this election. So they may try to take away some of the strategic advantage that Trump has by being pro Bitcoin and pro crypto. And so they may also come out as pro Bitcoin and pro crypto, because it's not like a polarizing issue like something like pro life or pro choice for most people. So they could keep voters from going over to the other side just by saying, hey, we're also pro crypto. And so there's not a distinguishing feature there. So I think we could see something like that come out. But if we don't, then I think Trump's going to have a lot of voters on his side that are in the crypto space, that have Bitcoin, that understand self-sovereignty, that understand the importance of keeping government from reaching its fingers into everything. That's going to put him in a good position. But just more conversations back and forth are going to happen. And what this will do, if you're thinking about what about the price, what to buy, you right now have the approved coins and tokens and the non-approved coins and tokens. So the approved ones like Bitcoin and Ethereum, they have their spot ETFs. ETH isn't online yet, but because of those approvals in place, they're going to be more favorable. The non-approved ones are still going to be favorable until you have any sort of regulatory policy comes down that crushes them. But until that happens, they're still going to do what they do. And like I said, rising tide will lift all boats. So in the space, there's still going to be all the opportunities for all the meme coins and all the altcoins and all those degen plays and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be there. Now, will it last for forever? Probably not. But throughout the next year and a half, that's probably going to be a time where a lot of that stuff still is in play. And in the future, as larger institutions, governments, financial institutions, right, ETFs, all that kind of stuff gets solidified and the market stabilizes, you'll have the ones that are on the inside and the ones that are on the outside. And the ones that are on the outside, it's going to be hard to play ball with those ones. And the ones that are on the inside, they're going to have all the opportunity. So I think we're going to start seeing that happening in the next few years. So for the space as a whole, if you're involved in the space, this is bullish news. I don't think there's anything. You should just be excited, right? That this is actually happening on the United States political stage. I think that's pretty wild, and it just shows Bitcoin is keeping doing what Bitcoin is doing. And I think overall, Bitcoin's my favorite. I think Bitcoin's going to win out there. But anyways, that is it for this video. What do you think? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and let me know if you think it's going to be wild or if it's not, or if it's going to be a big deal or not a big deal. If this will help swing the election one way or another. Comment below and let me know. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.